Welcome back to the YouTube channel, and today I want to talk about why you should not have friends. Now, before we get into this and you start yelling at me in the comment sections, let's break this down. So, first disclaimer, I just want to say that no matter what position you're in or where you are, it doesn't mean I believe every single person should not have friends. It does not mean that. I'm talking about a specific situation and how it really helped me and maybe how it could help you too. So let's dive right into it. When I was younger, I had a lot of friends. I was one of those guys that, not to say I was an extrovert, I did keep to myself a lot more than I do now. And I didn't articulate my words well, but I was not opposed to having friends. It was up until not the lessons I learned that I messed up with friends. It was actually what really taught me that I should not have friends or it wouldn't be helpful if I did was actually through my brother, right? This is what's interesting. Check this out. When I was younger, I really looked up to him. You know what I mean? I still do. You know what I mean? Till this day, I look up to that guy forever. And he had these friends. He was very close with them, and they were all hanging out. And they would go to hang out, and he'd invite me because he was a great guy. And I'd go with him and be a great time. But what ended up happening was those friends started developing envy as he was moving on from them. Those friends started developing greed because they wanted more of him. And I don't know if you know where I'm going with this, but envy and greed, those are already two steps down the deadly sins, right? So they're people who, I'm not going to say they were coming from malicious intent. They were young. They were only probably in their late teens, like 19. And my brother was at a point where he was moving on. He was going to his college phase. And I was only maybe 13, 14 years old watching him do this, watching from afar and learning. And what I had learned, really my biggest takeaway that I had and still have to this day, is that friends can be very, very useless and can try to eat up your time with greed. And sometimes in situations like mine, they wanted to eat up my time. So what ended up happening, to continue with the story, my brother ended up, kind of letting go in them, and he went his separate ways. He did his college route, and it was great. And as I started getting older, those few friends wanted to become friends with me. Because now I was, new bait almost. It's like I'm the new fish in the little pond, I guess, whatever you want to call it. I was the new kid in town, and I was doing what I was doing. We were doing musical theater at the time, so it was there weren't a lot of straight kids, if I'm going to be honest, and I was one of the very few, and they were loving it. Especially they wanted to know more about my brother, and I knew, it's like boxing, right? I knew that I had to play defense. You know what I mean? I knew I had to play defense. I knew how to dodge and slip. I knew all of these things. So by the time they tried to become friends with me, it's not that I just shut them down or ghosted them. I just kept them out of range. Just like boxing. Keep them out of range. I didn't even entertain a fight. What instead I did was just leave them where they were. And they tried to get close, and I would just back up. There was no reason to throw a punch, metaphorically, right, verbally, try to come after them. There was no reason to physically try to come after them. So what was the point? Now moving on to more of the second portion of what I'm talking about. That's how it hurt me, and that's what I learned. But what exactly was the outcome, right? During COVID, and this really happened a lot in my life. During COVID, when I was around 15 years old, I'm very young, I know. I had a lot of friends right before COVID. I had not necessarily close friends, but people wanted to hang out with me. People were expecting me to hang out with them. I remember it was insane. And I had already learned, right? From friends I'd already learned, but I was a 14-year-old hormonal kid about to take on the world. And then COVID hits. That was like 2019. COVID hits 2020, and then no more friends. I move out. We move to a different state, and I'm next to nobody. And I'm sitting there with just me, my family, and we're all nervous. It was the beginning of COVID. We were nervous we're going to die. You know what I mean? And I'm so depleted. And so I was just missing that dopamine so much of people and energy. And I found myself being an extrovert that I now was losing energy. And my brother still had friends from his college and things like that, but it was COVID. No one could see each other, so I was forced to be disciplined. Now, this is where I learned. This is where the outcome came in. I had started screenwriting. I used to like learning a lot of skills. That was a skill I really wanted to learn, was to screenwrite. I was really passionate about it, so I learned. I didn't just learn. I achieved my highest threshold. I was doing like 8-10 hours a day. I was just straight up screenwriting. I was killing it. Yeah, I became even a role model for my younger siblings. It was amazing. Any younger cousins, things like that, where I was like, I feel like this is what it's like to be an adult. It was really, in my opinion, like my first year of being an adult, because I was, not to toot my own horn, I was very mature for my age. So I think that was almost my first year of seeing the world how it is. This is what responsibility means. This is what discipline means. Conscious discipline, not subconscious discipline. You got to go to school and then you realize, look how many days I did because you were forced to do it because you had to. No, it's actually like you didn't really have to do it. You did it anyway. Right? And I learned so much from that. But if COVID never happened, how much of my life would be different is a question I ask probably these days at least multiple times a week. I just wonder. I get so worked up about it because I'm like, what would it look like if I did have those friends? Because eventually I started to realize, the hard way I realized, that these friends didn't care about me. They didn't. They didn't care about me whatsoever. They didn't contact me to tell me how I'm doing. I contacted some of them. Some answered, some didn't. Most didn't really care about what I was doing, didn't ask. And now I had a reason for them to ask. I was doing something by myself, killing it, right? Writing so many pages, like 500 pages in 5 months. I mean, just aggressive, right? Brute force, killing it. And they didn't contact me. Nothing. So I wonder, if you ask yourself, and I don't want to be too presumptuous by saying this to you guys, to the audience, you know what I mean? If you guys ask yourself, if you were in that position, a COVID type position, and you could be disciplined and you could have it all, really, you know what I mean? It was all set up for me to be in a great work environment. That's why it worked. And I was just in my habits, doing what I'm doing. If you had that, first of all, would you be disciplined? Which I think you would. And would you have friends that would still call you and still care about that side thing you're doing? Do your friends still care about that side thing you're doing? Do they care about how disciplined you are? They only talk about themselves? I started to realize that after COVID, that most of my friends were talking about themselves and didn't even care. And even these days, most people, unless I bring up me, don't really bring it up unless it's how are you? Not to say I'm just surrounded by I'm surrounded by a high percentage of narcissists, but I don't think it's just me, and maybe it is. You guys let me know. But when it comes to friends and hanging out just to hang out, I start to wonder if I was using them for dopamine's sake because I got energy out of other people, or if I really enjoyed them. Now, my family is a different story. I know some people don't have families out there, so you might not be able to sympathize, but I bet you can empathize. I bet you can understand that with family, it's different. It's, again, not necessarily forced, but it's a responsibility, especially with younger siblings. If you have a lot of siblings and you're the oldest, or even if you're the middle child, you have both responsibilities to take care of the younger siblings while also learning from the older ones. Right? And if your parents, if you happen to have a system that was so great that you eventually start to realize that these aren't friends anymore. This is the difference between friends and family. It's not blood. I realized that. I realized that heavily when I started to think that my brother, we'd have so many disagreements. You know what I mean? Especially with friends, because he's a big extrovert, you know, even bigger than me, way bigger than me. And he loves it, you know what I mean? He's amazing. And he's amazing at talking to people. It's unbelievable. And a hilarious person. So we'd have arguments about it, you know, why I think I shouldn't have friends. I think this is, if I can't do it on my own, might as well not do it at all. And he would have different arguments, but I would discredit him almost as a person in my mind. I was like, oh, he just doesn't know. But when I thought about it, he not just asked about what I was doing, he really cared. It affected him personally. And another layer of that is also he'd have my back for anything. Argument's sake, physical altercation's sake, he would have my back for anything. I've never seen him take the other side, even if I was wrong, which is like, and vice versa. I would always take his side just because I trust that one way or another he's probably right. All right, so on that note, hopefully you guys got a little something out of that. And I do believe that it's not necessarily that you shouldn't have friends. It's that next time you think about it, try, maybe, thinking about the conversation you're having from a third-party perspective. As if you're reading the conversation, and see if they talk about you a lot. See if it's mostly you giving the effort. And if it is, then I guess it'll change your perspective a little bit. All right, so I'll see you guys next time.